Welcome back to Ralph's Sorta True Stories. I'm Ralph, and I live in Cave Creek, Arizona. Now, here in Cave Creek, we got a group of fellows that we call them creekers. Now, creekers are mostly day laborers, and they like to drink beer. So, with a creeker, if he doesn't have any money, he works. And if he does have money, he drinks beer. And I want to tell you about one creeker whose real name was Mike, but his name in town is Roadkill. Now, Roadkill got his name because at the local watering hole called the mine shaft, he would drink until closing, and then he'd walk over to the Circle K across the street, and he would buy a quart of beer because he had to walk about 5 or 6 miles back to Cahava Ranch, where he lived in his van. It was about 5 or 6 miles if you were sober, and Roadkill rarely was, so it could be up to 10 miles with him staggering and all. Well, he got the name Roadkill because sometimes on the way over to the Circle K, he would stumble and he would fall down and pass out right in the middle of the road. So as we're driving our trucks down the road, if Mike was there, we'd haul him off to the side. Occasionally, if we were feeling particularly nice, we might even give him a ride home. But that's how he got the name Roadkill. Well, in this sort of true story, Roadkill happened to be walking with his quart of beer home, stumbling, and he stumbled into a ditch and he kicked up a empty bottle of Jack Daniels, and out came a genie. And the genie says, well, you got 3 wishes, because I've been in that bottle a long time. He said, but I got to tell you, once you make that wish, it's over with. It's done. So what would you like for your first wish? And Roadkill's kind of weaving there, and he's saying, for my first wish, I would like a horse, because I live on a ranch and I have to walk because I don't have a horse. The genie says, your wish is granted. Your horse is tied up at the back door of the Mine Shaft Tavern. He says, now what is your second wish? He says, for my second wish, I would like to have a gorilla. He said, you want a gorilla for your second wish? Yes, I want a gorilla. He says, well, you've got a gorilla. He's right next to your horse at the back door of the mine shaft. He said, but tell me, why would you want a gorilla? I think if I was so drunk when I came out of the mine shaft, I might not be able to mount my horse. So if I had a gorilla, then the gorilla could lift me up on my horse. The genie says, well, there's a certain amount of logic to that. Now, keep in mind, this is your last wish coming up. You could have $1 billion in a Swiss bank account. You could have mansions all over the world. But as soon as you make this wish, it's over. Well, now, Roadkill, as we've seen, is pretty well in the bag, so he thinks about it. He thinks about it. He says, for my final wish, I would like a chipmunk. Jesus, a chipmunk. All right, you got it. Your wishes are over. He said again, out of idle curiosity, why would you want a chipmunk? He said, I think if I was so drunk that the gorilla had to lift me up on the horse, then when I wanted to get going on that horse, I might need the chipmunk to go. I think old Roadkill just sort of wasted that last wish pretty dang well. There's this lawyer come from New York, and he was out bird hunting in one of the fields, and he shot this bird, and this bird came and landed on the other side of this barbed wire fence. So the lawyer, who's big fella, he's about 6'2", 250, I'd say. Anyway, he crawls in between the barbed wire and he picks up his bird, and he's starting to crawl back, and this fella rides up on a horse. Now this fella happened to be Mr. Garrison. And Mr. Garrison owned the ranch that was on that side of the barbed wire fence. And he was sort of a stereotypical old cowboy. He was probably 70 years old. He was not real tall, but he was wiry and leathered skinned. And he rode up to this lawyer and he says, "What are you doing on my property?" And the lawyer says, "Well," he says, "I shot this bird over there and it came and it landed here and I'm getting my bird back." He said, "Excuse me? That is not your bird. That bird's on my property. And Arizona state land law says that bird is my bird, not your bird." And the lawyer says, "Well, you know, you happen to be talking to one of the greatest trial lawyers in the country. I'm not only a member of the bar in New York State, but also in Arizona State." He said, "And if we was to go to court on this thing, by the time I got done with you, I'd end up owning your ranch." And Mr. Garrison says, Now, I'm not so sure about that, but we got a way of settling disputes down here in Arizona that does not involve getting the federales into it." He said, "We got a thing down here called the 3-kick rule." And the lawyer says, "Well, how does that work?" Well, Mr. Garrison dismounted from his horse and he walked over to him and he says, he said, "One fella kicks the first fella 3 times. And then that fella kicks the other fella 3 times. And then the first fella kicks the other fella." It keeps on going like that until one of them gives up. If one of them gives up, it's the other guy's bird. So this lawyer, being a big fella, looks at Mr. Garrison and says, "Yeah, I think I could go along with that." Mr. Garrison says, now, since it's my land, he said, "I get to go first." He said, "Well, take your best shot." Well, Mr. Garrison hauls off with his pointy boot and kicks him right in the groin. And this guy bends over moaning. Mr. Garrison jumps up and takes the heel of his boot and comes down on him as he's bent over right in his kidney. Fella falls down, sprawls out on the ground. Mr. Garrison jumps up, lands right on the guy's head with both feet. Well, this guy's pretty well knocked out, but he kind of comes to and he gets up and he says, "All right, you SOB." He said, "It's my turn." Mr. Garrison says, No, I give up. It's your bird." That's how Arizona justice works. Well, toodaloo, buckaroos, and thanks for watching Ralph's Sorta True Stories. Now, before you go, down there at the bottom below the screen, there's a little place with a thumbs up. I need you to hit that thing and then move over to the right. They got a thing called subscribe. Click on that, and next to that there's a little bell. Hit that bell, and that way you'll get a notification whenever we put up some new videos. And again, I want to thank you for watching Ralph's Sorta True Stories.